Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Warrior's Return. Master Sergeant Victor Steele adjusted his tactical vest one final time as the Afghan sun painted the horizon crimson. 23 years of military service, 15 deployments, and countless classified operations had forged him into something harder than the desert sand beneath his boots. At 45, his gray-streaked hair and weathered face told stories that would never appear in official reports. Last patrol, Steele called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from across the forward operating base. "Tomorrow you're stateside for good." Victor nodded but didn't smile. Home meant returning to his wife Bridget and 17-year-old son Danny in Boulder Creek, California. The letters from home had grown shorter over the months, Bridget's once warm words now clinical and distant. Their video calls had become perfunctory, filled with awkward silences and forced conversation about neighborhood gossip and Danny's senior year. The marriage had been rocky before this deployment. Bridget, a real estate agent with aspirations of social climbing, had grown tired of military life's unpredictability. She made comments about wasting her prime years, waiting for a man who was never really there anyway. Victor had hoped this final deployment would give them both space to think, to maybe salvage what they'd built over 18 years together. But soldiers learn to read between the lines, and Victor had been reading danger signs for months. His satellite phone buzzed, a text from Danny. "Can't wait for you to come home, Dad. Things have been different here." Victor frowned at the screen. Danny was usually more expressive, more excited about his father's returns. The boy worshipped his old man, always had. Victor had taught him to hunt, fish, and fight, skills that had made Danny confident and respected among his peers. But something in that message felt wrong. The transport to Ramstein Air Base would leave at 0600. Victor spent his final night in Afghanistan cleaning his personal weapons, a ritual that calmed his mind. His hands moved automatically over the steel, muscle memory from decades of practice. He'd survived firefights in Fallujah, hunted insurgents through the mountains of eastern Afghanistan, and eliminated targets whose names would remain classified forever. As he worked, Victor reflected on the man he'd become. The military had taken a 19-year-old kid from rural Montana and transformed him into something different. Something designed to survive and succeed where others failed. He'd learned patience, planning, and when necessary, ruthless efficiency. His psychological evaluations always came back the same: highly functional under stress, exceptional tactical thinking, strong moral code, but pragmatic in execution. The phone rang, startling him from his thoughts. Unknown number. "This is Steele." Heavy breathing, then Danny's voice, barely a whisper. "Dad? Dad, are you there?" "Danny? What's wrong, son? I can't talk long. They don't know I got Mom's old phone working." "Dad, something's really wrong here. Mom's been acting strange, and there are these guys who come around. They look like bad news, Dad. Real bad news." Victor's blood chilled. His fatherly instincts screamed danger, but his tactical mind noted the fear in his son's voice. Genuine terror, not teenage drama. "What kind of guys, Danny? Tell me exactly what you've seen." "Big guys. Tattoos. They drive this black SUV, and they talk to Mom when they think I can't hear. One of them has this scar across his throat, and he keeps looking at pictures of you." "Dad, I think." The line went dead. Victor tried calling back immediately. No answer. He tried the house landline, disconnected. His attempts to reach Bridget's cell went straight to voicemail. For the first time in years, Master Sergeant Victor Steele felt genuine fear. Not for himself, but for his son. And underneath that fear, something else began to burn. Something that had kept him alive through countless battles and would serve him well in whatever was waiting at home. Chapter 2. The Trap Revealed. The commercial flight from Frankfurt to San Francisco felt like an eternity. Victor had managed to get himself bumped up to business class using military courtesy upgrades, but comfort was the last thing on his mind. Every hour without contact from Danny felt like a knife twisting in his gut. He tried calling his brother-in-law Kevin, who lived 20 minutes from Victor's house, but Kevin claimed he hadn't seen Bridget or Danny in weeks. Something in Kevin's voice had seemed off too, nervous, evasive. Kevin had always been straight with Victor, even when delivering bad news about family matters during previous deployments. Victor's phone buzzed as the plane began its descent into SFO. Danny's number. But when he answered, the voice that greeted him wasn't his son's. "Daddy's coming home," a gravelly voice said with mock sweetness. "We've been waiting." "Who is this? Where's my son?" A different voice came on, Danny's, but strained with terror. "Dad, don't come home. It's a trap. Mom's." "Shut up," the gravelly voice returned. "Here's how this works, soldier boy. Your loving wife has some new friends, and we've been having real interesting conversations about you. Seems like you're worth more dead than alive to certain people." Victor's training kicked in. He activated the voice recording app on his phone while keeping his expression neutral for the benefit of other passengers. "Your boy's been real helpful setting things up," the voice continued. "Haven't you, Danny? Tell Daddy what you did." Danny's voice, breaking with sobs. "Dad, they made me. They said they'd hurt Mom if I didn't. I had to give them your patrol schedules, your return dates, everything. They made me set up the whole thing." "What thing, Danny?" "The ambush. They were going to make it look like you died over there, but you came home too early. Now they're going to." "Enough," the gravelly voice returned. "Change of plans, Victor. You're going to come home like a good husband, walk right into your house, and then we're going to have ourselves a little family reunion. With baseball bats. Your boy's going to watch every second of it." The line went dead as the plane touched down. Victor sat in the growing dusk of the San Francisco airport, his mind racing through possibilities. This wasn't random. Bridget had orchestrated something, but why? Insurance money was the obvious motive, but she'd never shown interest in the military death benefits. There had to be more. He thought about the voice, professional controlled. These weren't street thugs or random criminals. They were organized, methodical. The kind of people who planned operations and executed them with precision. As he waited for his connection to Sacramento, Victor made a series of calls. First, to his old team leader from Delta Force, now working private security in Colorado. Second, to a contact at the FBI who owed him a favor from a joint operation in Syria. Third, to his lawyer, leaving a detailed voicemail about his current situation. Then he called a number he'd hoped never to use. His former commanding officer, Colonel Hayes, who now ran a consulting firm that specialized in problem resolution for retired military personnel. "Steele? Jesus, I thought you were still deployed." "Change of plans, sir. I need a favor." "Multiple favors, actually." Victor explained the situation in military brevity. Hayes listened without interruption, then sighed. "Son, this sounds like a professional hit dressed up as domestic drama. You sure about your wife?" "No, sir. I'm not sure about anything. But my boy's in danger, and I need to know who's pulling the strings before I walk into whatever they've set up. Give me 2 hours. I'll have everything I can find on your wife's recent activities, financial records, and any new associates." "And Victor?" "Yes, sir. Don't go in alone. Whatever's waiting for you at home, it's bigger than a cheating wife and some thugs." Victor boarded his final flight with a growing understanding that his war wasn't ending. It was just changing theaters. As the plane lifted off towards Sacramento, he began mentally preparing for the kind of operation he'd hoped to leave behind forever. But some skills once learned never fade, and some enemies, once identified, never deserve mercy. Chapter 3: Reconnaissance and Discovery. Victor rented a nondescript Honda Civic at Sacramento International and drove the 2 hours to Boulder Creek in complete silence, his mind cataloging every detail of the route home. He'd been gone 8 months, but muscle memory guided him through the familiar turns of his neighborhood, as if he'd never left. At 0300 hours, he parked 6 blocks from his house and approached on foot, moving through the shadows with the practiced silence of 2 decades of night operations. His house sat on a corner lot with good sight lines, one of the reasons he'd chosen it years ago. Now, he studied it like a target. 3 vehicles he didn't recognize: the black SUV Danny had mentioned, a white panel van, and a dark sedan. Professional staging. Through his binoculars, he could see movement inside, At least 4 figures, maybe more. The living room curtains were drawn, but light leaked around the edges. Someone was awake and waiting. Victor circled the property, noting exit routes and defensive positions. The backslider door showed signs of forced entry, scratches around the lock, bent frame. These people had been here for days, maybe weeks. His phone buzzed with a text from Colonel Hayes. Info package incoming. Your wife's been busy. Check your secure email. Victor retreated to a 24-hour diner downtown and opened his encrypted email on a laptop he'd purchased with cash. What he found made his blood run cold. Bridget hadn't just been cheating, she'd been planning. For months. Bank records showed large cash withdrawals, meetings with a lawyer specializing in military death benefits, and most damning, a life insurance policy taken out on Victor just days before his deployment. The beneficiary wasn't just Bridget. It was split between her and someone named Gareth Thorne. Victor's jaw tightened as he read Thorne's file. Former Marine, dishonorably discharged for assault. Multiple arrests for loan sharking and intimidation. Currently employed by a private security firm that specialized in debt collection and conflict resolution. The kind of outfit that didn't ask questions and didn't leave witnesses. But the real revelation came in the final document. Transcripts of phone conversations between Bridget and Thorne over the past 3 months, obtained through methods Victor didn't want to examine too closely. The insurance pays double for accidental death. Bridget's voice, cold and calculating. Make it look like enemy action or a training accident. What about the kid? Thorne's voice, the same gravelly tone from the phone call. Danny doesn't know anything. After Victor's gone, I'll tell him his father died a hero. He'll believe it. And if he doesn't, a pause, then Bridget's voice, without emotion. Then we'll have to make sure he believes it. Victor closed the laptop and sat in the diner booth, his hands trembling with rage. Not just betrayal, a plot to murder him and potentially his son. Bridget wasn't just an unfaithful wife. She was a calculating predator who'd spent months orchestrating his death. The waitress refilled his coffee and noticed his expression. You okay, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost. Victor looked up at her, and for a moment, she stepped back from something she saw in his eyes. Not a ghost, he said quietly. Just remembering who I used to be. At 0530, Victor's phone rang. Danny's number again. Dad, his son's voice, barely audible. They're getting ready for you. They moved me to the basement, but I can hear them talking. They're going to make it look like a home invasion gone wrong. Dad, don't come home. Please. Danny, listen to me very carefully. Can you get out of the house? No. They have someone watching the basement door. Dad, there's something else. Mom, she's not who you think she is. She's been planning this for months. I heard her and that Thorne guy talking about insurance money and starting over somewhere else. How long have you known? Since last month. I confronted her about it, and she broke down crying, said she was sorry, but it was too late to stop it now. She said you'd never forgive her for what she'd done, so she had to see it through. Victor's tactical mind processed this information with cold efficiency. Bridget was right about one thing. He would never forgive her. But she made a critical error in judgment about what that meant for her future. Danny, I'm going to get you out of there. But when I do, things are going to get very bad for the people who've been holding you. Do you understand? Yes, sir. And Danny, whatever happens, whatever you see, remember that everything I do is to protect you. Can you trust me on that? A pause. Dad, you sound different. Victor looked at his reflection in the diner window. The face of Master Sergeant Victor Steele, a man trained to eliminate threats to national security. A man who'd killed for his country and was about to kill for his family. I'm different, son. I'm what I need to be. As the sun rose over Boulder Creek, Victor began planning an operation that would make his military missions look like training exercises. Because this wasn't about national security or foreign enemies. This was personal. Chapter 4. The Soldier's Chess Game. Victor spent the day conducting surveillance and planning from a motel room across town. Using techniques learned in counterterrorism operations, he mapped out every detail of his adversary's routines, capabilities, and weaknesses. By noon, he'd identified the players, Gareth Thorne, the ringleader, plus 3 associates who rotated shifts watching the house. All ex-military or ex-police, all with criminal records. Professional killers disguised as debt collectors. But Victor had advantages they didn't know about. 23 years of military service had connected him to a network of specialists who owed favors or could be persuaded to help a brother in need. His secure phone buzzed with confirmations as pieces fell into place. His first call was to Tommy Rodriguez, a former Marine sniper now working as a hunting guide in Montana. I need overwatch on a residential target. Non-lethal surveillance only until I give the word. How many targets, Victor? 4 confirmed, possibly more. Professional security contractors, armed and dangerous. When do you need me? I needed you yesterday. I'll be there by midnight. The second call went to Maria Santos, a former Air Force intelligence officer who now ran a private investigation firm. I need full background workups on these 4 individuals, plus financial forensics on my wife's recent activities. Victor, this sounds like you're planning something illegal. I'm planning to protect my son from people who want to kill us both. Legality is a secondary concern. A pause. Send me the files. You'll have everything by tonight. The third call was the most difficult, to his younger brother Rick, a Boulder County Sheriff's deputy. Victor? Jesus, I thought you were still overseas. Bridget said. What did Bridget say? That you were extending your deployment, might not be back for months. She seemed relieved about it. Victor explained the situation, leaving out nothing. When he finished, Rick was silent for a long time. Holy shit, Victor. You're talking about a conspiracy to commit murder. We need to bring in the FBI, get Danny into protective custody. Rick, by the time federal agents sort through jurisdictional issues and warrant requirements, my son could be dead. These people have been planning this for months. They won't hesitate to eliminate witnesses. So what are you proposing? Some kind of vigilante justice. Victor's voice turned cold. I'm proposing to neutralize threats to my family using appropriate force. What happens to the threats after neutralization is their problem, not mine. Rick sighed. You're asking me to look the other way while you commit murder. I'm asking you to be somewhere else when justice gets served. Another pause. Victor, you're my brother and I love you, but Danny is your nephew. These people want to kill him too. Are you going to let that happen because of bureaucratic procedures? Damn it. Give me 12 hours before you do anything. Let me at least try to get Danny out legally. You have 6 hours. After that, I'm doing this my way. At 1800 hours, Victor received the intelligence package from Maria Santos. The information was devastating and comprehensive. Bridget had been planning Victor's death since before his deployment, using insurance money to fund a new life with Thorne in Costa Rica. But there was more. Danny wasn't just a witness to be eliminated. He was collateral damage in a larger scheme. Bridget's affair with Thorne had started 2 years ago, and she'd been slowly poisoning Danny's mind against his father, telling him that Victor didn't love them enough to leave the military, that he cared more about war than family. The psychological manipulation had been subtle but persistent. Danny's grades had dropped, he'd quit the football team, and he'd started getting into fights at school. Classic signs of a teenager under severe emotional stress. But the recordings revealed the truth. Danny had been defending his father against Bridget's constant criticism, refusing to believe that Victor would abandon his family. The boy's loyalty had made him a liability in Bridget's plan. Victor's phone buzzed with a text from Rick. No luck with family services or FBI. They want to treat this as a domestic dispute until there's an actual crime. You know what that means. Victor knew exactly what it meant. The system would let his son die while following proper procedures. At 2000 hours, Tommy Rodriguez called. I'm in position. Your house is definitely under siege. 4 hostiles, rotating shifts, military-grade weapons. Your boy's in the basement, but he looks okay. Your wife is upstairs with the leader. They're having what looks like a heated argument. About what? Can't hear words, but body language suggests she's having second thoughts. He's not happy about it. Victor processed this information with tactical precision. Bridget's doubt could be either an opportunity or a complication. Either way, it meant the timeline was accelerating. Tommy, I'm going in at 0200. When you see my signal, light up anyone who tries to leave the house. Copy that. Victor, these guys aren't amateurs. You sure you want to do this alone? Victor checked his equipment one final time, weapons, tactical gear, and items that would make his old Delta Force instructors proud. I've been alone for 8 months while my family was in danger. It's time to bring them home. As midnight approached, Victor began his final preparations. This wasn't just about rescuing Danny anymore. It was about sending a message to anyone who thought they could threaten his family and live to tell about it. The soldier was coming home, and he was bringing war with him. Chapter 5: Infiltration and Revelation. At 0130 hours, Victor approached his house for the second time, but now he moved with lethal purpose. Tommy Rodriguez's voice crackled through his earpiece. Overwatch in position. 2 targets on the ground floor, 1 upstairs with your wife, 1 in the kitchen. Your son appears to be alone in the basement. Victor had studied the blueprints of his own house, memorizing every entrance, every line of sight, every tactical advantage. What Bridget and her accomplices didn't know was that he designed the house's security features himself, including several modifications that weren't on any official building plans. The first entry point was through the crawl space beneath the house, a route that connected to the basement through a hidden panel Victor had installed years ago for emergency purposes. He'd never imagined using it to rescue his own son from his own wife. Moving with practiced silence, Victor navigated the narrow space beneath his house, guided by a small tactical flashlight. The basement was directly above, and he could hear movement, Danny's restless pacing and the creak of the chair where his guard was stationed. Victor accessed the hidden panel and listened. Footsteps, rhythmic and bored. The guard was walking a pattern, probably checking his phone or fighting sleep during the night shift. Through the gap, Victor could see Danny sitting on an old couch, hands zip-tied, but alert and uninjured. The basement guard was young, maybe 25, with the swagger of someone who'd never faced a real predator. He was armed with a pistol, but his attention was divided between his prisoner and a smartphone video game. Victor waited for the guard to turn his back, then emerged from the panel with fluid motion. The guard had exactly enough time to register movement before Victor's hand clamped over his mouth and a sleeper hold cut off his air supply. In 15 seconds, the guard was unconscious. "Dad," Danny whispered, eyes wide with relief and terror. Victor cut his son's restraints and pulled him close. "Are you hurt?" "No, just scared." "Dad, Mom's upstairs with that Thorn guy. They've been arguing for hours. She keeps saying she wants to call it off, and he keeps telling her it's too late." "How many others?" "3 more guys. 2 downstairs, 1 watching the back door." "Dad, these guys are professionals. They've been planning this down to the minute." Victor's earpiece crackled. Movement upstairs. "Looks like your wife is trying to leave the bedroom. Target 1 is restraining her." Victor's jaw tightened. Whatever Bridget had planned, she was either having genuine second thoughts or trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage. Either way, it didn't change what had to happen. "Danny, I need you to go through that panel and wait in the crawl space until I come for you." "Dad, what are you going to do?" Victor looked at his son, seeing the teenager he'd left behind 8 months ago, but also the man he was becoming. "I'm going to end this. Tonight. Forever. Are you going to kill them?" The question hung in the air between them. Victor thought about lying, about protecting his son from the truth of what was about to happen. But Danny deserved honesty. "Yes." Danny nodded slowly. "Good. They were going to kill us both." As his son disappeared into the crawl space, Victor felt a mixture of pride and sorrow. Pride that Danny understood the stakes, sorrow that he had to. Victor bound and gagged the unconscious guard, then moved to the basement stairs. Through his earpiece, Tommy provided tactical updates. Target 2 is in the kitchen, making coffee. Target 3 is in the living room, appears to be sleeping in a chair. Target 1 and your wife are still upstairs. Victor climbed the stairs with predatory patience. The kitchen guard was silhouetted against the window, stirring sugar into his mug, completely unaware that death was approaching from behind. The takedown was swift and silent, a blood choke that rendered the guard unconscious within seconds. Victor dragged the body behind the kitchen island and moved toward the living room. The sleeping guard wasn't actually sleeping. He was dozing fitfully, his hand resting on a pistol in his lap. Victor studied him for a moment, noting the gang tattoos, the scarred knuckles, the face of someone who'd hurt people for money. This one didn't get the gentle treatment. Victor's combat knife found the guard's throat with surgical precision, cutting off any possibility of raising an alarm. The man died without waking. 3 down, Victor whispered into his mic. Copy that. Target 1 and your wife are moving. Sounds like they're coming downstairs. Victor positioned himself in the shadow of the staircase, listening to the argument descending toward him. Told you this was a mistake from the beginning, Bridget was saying, her voice strained with emotion. He's not supposed to be back yet. Something went wrong. Nothing went wrong. Thorne's voice, cold and professional. Plans change. We adapt. Your husband dies tonight. You collect the insurance, and we disappear. Just like we discussed. But Danny's seen too much. You know what that means. Victor heard his wife's sharp intake of breath. You said we'd send him to boarding school. That we'd. I lied. The kid knows everything. He's a liability. No, I won't let you hurt my son. Thorne's laugh was like gravel. Your son? Bridget, you've been trying to turn him against his father for 2 years. The kid hates you more than he hates Victor. He's not going to keep quiet about what happened here. They reached the bottom of the stairs, and Victor could see them clearly now. Bridget looked haggard, desperate, nothing like the confident woman he'd married. Thorne was exactly what Victor had expected, a professional killer with cold eyes and steady hands. Where is everyone? Thorne asked, noticing the unusual quiet. That's when Victor stepped out of the shadows. They're indisposed, he said quietly. Thorne spun toward the voice, his hand moving toward his weapon. But he was facing a man who'd survived firefights in 3 different wars. Victor's first shot took Thorne in the shoulder, spinning him around. The second shot shattered his kneecap, dropping him to the floor. Bridget screamed and tried to run, but Victor's voice stopped her cold. Sit down, Bridget. We need to talk. Chapter 6, The Reckoning Begins. Bridget stood frozen in the living room, staring at her husband as if seeing him for the first time. In a way, she was. The man who just shot Gareth Thorne wasn't the same person who'd kissed her goodbye 8 months ago. This was Master Sergeant Victor Steele in full tactical mode, controlled, deadly, and absolutely without mercy. Thorne writhed on the floor, clutching his shattered knee, his shoulder bleeding steadily. You bastard, he gasped. You have no idea what you've done. I know exactly what I've done, Victor replied, his voice conversational. I've begun the process of eliminating threats to my family. Victor's earpiece crackled. You've got company coming. 3 vehicles, moving fast from the south. ETA, 5 minutes. Victor processed this information without changing expression. Backup was coming, which meant this operation was larger than just 4 hired killers. Bridget, sit down. Now. She stumbled to the couch, her face pale with shock. Victor, I can explain. No explanation needed. I've heard the recordings. I know about the insurance policy. I know about your plan to kill me and Danny. The only question is whether you're going to cooperate or join your boyfriend on the floor. Thorne tried to speak, but Victor silenced him with a look that promised violence. Who's coming? Victor asked his wife. How many more people are involved in this? Bridget's hands trembled. I don't know what you mean. Victor pulled out his phone and played back one of the recorded conversations. Bridget discussing backup plans with Thorne, mentioning the others who would clean up any loose ends. That's your voice, Bridget. So I'll ask again, who's coming? Thorne's associates, she whispered. If something went wrong, they were supposed to make it look like a home invasion. Kill everyone and burn the house down. Victor nodded, unsurprised. How many? 6. Maybe 8. I don't know exactly. Tommy, did you copy that? Victor spoke into his mic. Copy. I count 6 hostiles and 2 vehicles, heavily armed. Victor, you need to get out of there. Negative. I'm not leaving my son. Victor turned to Bridget. You're going to help me, whether you want to or not. Because if Danny dies tonight, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your very short life wishing you'd never been born. Bridget nodded frantically. What do you want me to do? First, call them off. Tell them the situation is under control. I can't. They don't take orders from me. Thorne is their boss. Victor looked down at the wounded man. Then Thorne is going to make that call. He knelt beside Thorne and pressed his knife against the man's throat. Here's your choice, Gareth. Call off your people or I start cutting pieces off you until you change your mind." Thorne's eyes blazed with hatred, but pain and blood loss had weakened his resolve. "They won't listen. The contract's already been paid. They'll finish the job whether I'm alive or not. Then you just volunteer to be bait." Victor hauled Thorne to his feet and positioned him in front of the living room window, using him as a human shield. Through his earpiece, he could hear Tommy's tactical assessment. "Vehicles have stopped 2 blocks out. They're deploying on foot. Professional tactics, military-grade equipment. Tommy, when I give the signal, take out anyone with a clear shot. Non-lethal if possible, but protect yourself first." "Copy that." Victor turned to Bridget. "Get Danny from the basement. We're leaving through the back." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe, where we can finish this conversation without interruption." As Bridget headed for the basement, Victor's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We have the house surrounded. Send out Thorne and the woman, and we'll let you and the boy live." Victor smiled grimly and typed back, "Counteroffer. You have 60 seconds to leave my property before I start sending out body parts." The response came immediately. "You're outnumbered 8-1. Be smart about this." Victor's reply was simple. "I'm a Delta Force operator who spent 23 years killing people more dangerous than you." 60 seconds just became 30. He moved to the window and fired a single shot into the darkness. Not at any target, but as a signal to Tommy and a warning to the attackers. The message was clear. Negotiations were over. Bridget returned with Danny, who looked at the scene in the living room with a mixture of horror and grim satisfaction. "Dad, who are those people outside?" "Cleanup crew. They're here to make sure no witnesses survive tonight." "What's the plan?" Victor looked at his son with fresh respect. Danny wasn't panicking or asking irrelevant questions. He was ready to fight. "We're going to give them exactly what they expect," Victor said. "And then we're going to kill them all." The battle for Victor's home was about to begin, and he intended to make it a massacre that would be remembered by anyone who ever thought about threatening his family again. Chapter 7. The Siege. The first shots came through the living room window at exactly 0215 hours, shattering glass and splintering what is Victor's family took cover behind the kitchen island. But Victor had anticipated this. The house had been prepared for this moment years ago, with reinforced walls and strategic firing positions that turned his home into a fortress. "Tommy, report." Victor spoke into his earpiece while returning fire through the window. "I count 8 hostiles, moving in coordinated teams. Military training, definitely professional. 2 down from my position, but they're using smoke grenades to limit my effectiveness." Victor nodded grimly. These weren't street thugs or amateur killers. They were operators, possibly former special forces. But they had made one critical error. They were attacking a man on his own ground, protecting his own family. "Danny, take your mother to the safe room. You remember where it is. Behind a bookshelf in your study." "But Dad, no arguments. Go, now." As his family retreated to the hidden room Victor had constructed during his home's renovation, he assessed his tactical situation. 8 attackers, professional training, automatic weapons. Under normal circumstances, this would be a suicide mission for any single operator. But Victor Steele wasn't normal circumstances. He was a man with nothing left to lose and everything to protect. The attackers were using standard room-clearing tactics, but Victor had advantages they couldn't account for. Hidden firing positions, interior walls reinforced with steel plates, and most importantly, intimate knowledge of every inch of the battlefield. He moved through his house like a ghost, using passages and sight lines he'd memorized during years of living there. The first attacker through the back door found himself facing Victor's shotgun at point-blank range, a mistake he wouldn't survive to regret. "Target down," Victor whispered into his mic, 7 remaining. But the attackers adapted quickly. Smoke grenades filled the ground floor, reducing visibility to 0. Victor switched to thermal imaging goggles, another modification they hadn't expected, and continued his deadly hunt through the haze. The second attacker died while trying to breach the kitchen entrance. The third fell to a booby trap Victor had set during his retreat to the upper floor. By 0230, the odds were shifting, but so was the nature of the engagement. Victor, They're setting up something big outside. Tommy's voice carried tension. Looks like they're preparing to blow a hole in your wall. Victor cursed silently. Explosives would change everything. His reinforced walls wouldn't stand up to military-grade charges. He needed to end this quickly before they brought down his house with his family inside. Tommy, I need you to create a distraction. Draw their attention to the front of the house. Copy that. Initiating diversionary fire in 30 seconds. Victor used those 30 seconds to reach the safe room, where he found Bridget and Danny huddled together behind the steel door. His wife looked terrified, but Danny met his eyes with steady determination. What's happening out there? Danny asked. We're winning, but they're about to escalate. I need to take the fight to them before they bring down the house. Dad. Danny's voice was quiet but firm. I want to help. Victor looked at his 17-year-old son, seeing the man he would become and the warrior's instinct he'd inherited. You already are helping. By staying safe, you're giving me the freedom to do what needs to be done. He turned to Bridget, who was staring at him with something approaching awe. This is who you married, he said simply. This is who I've always been. You just never wanted to see it. Victor, save it. When this is over, we'll talk. If we're all still alive. Tommy's diversion began with a sustained burst of sniper fire that sent the remaining attackers scrambling for cover. Victor used the confusion to exit through a concealed door in the basement, emerging behind enemy lines with the element of surprise. What followed was a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. Victor moved through his own neighborhood like a hunting predator, using landscaping and structures he'd studied for years as cover and concealment. The attackers found themselves fighting a ghost who struck from shadows and vanished before they could respond. The fourth attacker died while trying to set up the explosive charge. The fifth fell to Victor's knife while repositioning around the house's perimeter. By 02:45, only 3 remained, and their tactical discipline was beginning to crack under the psychological pressure of being hunted. Victor's earpiece crackled. Police sirens in the distance. Looks like someone called in the disturbance. That changed everything. When law enforcement arrived, they'd find a complex crime scene with multiple bodies and no clear understanding of who was victim and who was perpetrator. Victor needed to end this before outside authorities complicated the situation. He keyed his mic. Tommy, I'm going to end this in the next 5 minutes. When the police arrive, you were never here. Understood. Victor, these weren't random killers. Someone with serious resources sent them. Victor had suspected as much. The level of organization, the quality of equipment, the professional execution. This was a military operation disguised as a home invasion. Someone wanted his family dead badly enough to deploy an entire team of operators. The question was who and why. But that was a puzzle for later. Right now, he had 3 more targets to eliminate before the cavalry arrived. As he prepared for the final phase of the battle, Victor reflected on the irony. He'd spent 8 months fighting a war overseas, only to come home and fight the real war in his own backyard. But this war was different. This was personal, and he intended to win it with extreme prejudice. Chapter 8. No Witnesses. The final 3 attackers had regrouped behind Victor's neighbor's house, using the Johnsons' backyard shed as cover while they planned their next move. Victor could hear them arguing in hushed tones, professionals starting to realize that their mission had gone catastrophically wrong. Base, this is team leader. One of them spoke into a radio. Primary target has military training beyond our intelligence. Request immediate extraction. The response crackled back. Negative. Mission parameters unchanged. No witnesses. Victor smiled grimly in the darkness. Whoever was behind this operation was willing to sacrifice an entire team rather than leave loose ends. That told him everything he needed to know about how deep this conspiracy ran. Moving with practiced silence, Victor circled behind the attacker's position. The police sirens were getting closer, maybe 5 minutes out. He had to finish this quickly and cleanly, leaving a scene that would support his version of events. The first attacker never saw him coming. Victor's knife found its target with surgical precision, and the man died without making a sound. 2 left. The remaining attackers realized their teammate was down when his radio check went unanswered. Victor watched them through thermal imaging as they separated, trying to establish overlapping fields of fire while maintaining communication. "Tommy, where are the survivors positioned?" Victor whispered into his mic. "One behind the shed, 30 meters from your position. The other has moved to the street, using a parked car for cover. They're trying to box you in." Victor nodded. Classic tactics, but they were thinking like attackers, not defenders. They were in his territory now, and he knew every shadow, every line of sight, every tactical advantage the neighborhood offered. He moved toward the street position first, using the Johnson's hedge line as concealment. The attacker was crouched behind a minivan, weapon trained on the shed where he expected Victor to emerge. The man was professional, disciplined, and completely focused on the wrong target area. Victor's approach was silent and deadly. The attacker's radio crackled just as the knife found his throat. "Team leader, respond. Police are 2 minutes out." The final attacker, hearing no response from his teammate, made a critical error. He broke cover to investigate, exposing himself to Victor's position. The kill shot was clean and quiet, ending the battle with military precision. Victor quickly policed the area, collecting weapons and any identification that might complicate the investigation. As the first police units turned onto his street, he was back inside his house, establishing the scene that would tell his story. He found Thorne still alive, but unconscious from blood loss. Perfect. A surviving witness who could corroborate the home invasion story, at least partially. Victor zip-tied him securely and placed him where the police would find him. The official story would be simple. Armed intruders had attempted to rob the house, taken the family hostage, and been fought off by a combat veteran protecting his family. The bodies outside would support that narrative, especially with Thorne available to provide testimony. "Tommy, you need to disappear. Now." "Already gone." "But Victor?" "I pulled IDs from 2 of the bodies. These guys were contractors working for Blackwater subsidiaries. This isn't over." Victor acknowledged the warning and destroyed his earpiece before the police surrounded his house. As he walked to the safe room to collect his family, he processed what Tommy had told him. Professional military contractors meant serious money behind the operation, more than insurance fraud could justify. Someone wanted Victor dead for reasons that went beyond Bridget's marital problems. He found his wife and son exactly where he'd left them, both looking traumatized but alive. Danny immediately rushed to embrace his father, but Bridget hung back, staring at Victor with a mixture of fear and something approaching respect. "Is it over?" Danny asked. "This part is," Victor replied. "But we need to talk about what comes next." The police sirens were right outside now, and Victor could hear officers establishing a perimeter around his house. Soon there would be questions, statements, and investigations. But he'd been through this before in different contexts, and he knew how to handle law enforcement interviews. "Bridget," he said quietly, "here's what you're going to tell them. Armed intruders broke in while I was deployed. They held you and Danny hostage for ransom. I returned home and defended my family. That's it. Nothing about insurance policies or murder plots." "But what about nothing?" "You're going to stick to that story because it's the only thing that keeps you out of prison. And more importantly, it's the only thing that keeps Danny safe from whoever sent those contractors." Bridget nodded frantically. "Victor, I know you'll never forgive me, but I need you to know. Save it. We'll discuss your future after we deal with the immediate situation." As police officers began clearing the house, Victor prepared himself for the next phase. The immediate threat was eliminated, but the larger conspiracy remained. Someone with resources and connections had tried to have his family killed, and they wouldn't stop just because their first attempt had failed. But they made a crucial error in judgment. They tried to eliminate Master Sergeant Victor Steele, a man trained to identify and neutralize complex threats. Now that he knew enemies were out there, he would hunt them down with the same methodical precision he'd used to clear his house. The war was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Chapter 9. No Mercy, No Forgiveness. 3 days after the home invasion, Victor sat in his lawyer's office reviewing the final details of his divorce settlement. The police investigation had concluded exactly as he'd planned. justified self-defense by a combat veteran protecting his family from armed intruders. Gareth Thorne, recovering from surgery, had confirmed the story in exchange for a reduced sentence on weapons charges. But Victor's real business wasn't with lawyers or police. It was with the people who'd sent professional killers after his family. The insurance company is asking questions, his attorney said, reviewing the paperwork. $1 million policy taken out just before your deployment raises flags. Let them investigate, Victor replied. They'll find exactly what we want them to find. What they would find was a paper trail leading to Gareth Thorne's criminal associates, a fraudulent insurance scheme that had gone wrong when the intended victim proved more dangerous than expected. The real conspiracy, the one involving military contractors and shadowy employers, would remain hidden beneath layers of carefully constructed evidence. Victor's phone buzzed with a secure message from Colonel Hayes. Background check complete. Your wife's boyfriend wasn't working alone. Follow the money. The financial investigation had traced payments to Thorne through a series of shell companies, eventually leading to a defense contractor called Meridian Security Solutions. But the real revelation was in their client list, government agencies, foreign corporations, and individuals who paid premium rates for problem resolution. Victor recognized the pattern. This wasn't about insurance fraud. It was about eliminating a soldier who'd seen too much during his deployment. Someone wanted him dead because of what he might know about classified operations in Afghanistan. The question was who, and that would require more direct investigation. That evening, Victor found Bridget packing her belongings in what used to be their bedroom. Danny was at school, giving them privacy for a conversation they'd avoided for 3 days. I'm moving to my sister's place in Portland, she said without looking at him. The divorce papers give you full custody of Danny. That's generous of you, Victor replied, his voice neutral. It's not generosity, it's guilt. She finally met his eyes, and he saw genuine remorse there. I know what I did was unforgivable. I tried to have you kill Victor. My own husband. Yes, you did. And you killed 8 men to protect us. I killed 8 men to protect my son, Victor corrected. You stopped being part of my family the moment you decided I should die. Bridget nodded, tears starting to fall. I know. I need you to understand that I never meant for Danny to get hurt. When Thorne said he'd have to be eliminated too, I tried to stop it. Too little too late. I know. She finished packing and stood to leave. Victor? What you did that night? I finally understood who you really are. I'm sorry I never saw it before. You saw it, Victor said quietly. You just didn't want to accept it. After Bridget left, Victor went to Danny's room and found his son studying at his desk. The teenager looked up as his father entered, and Victor saw a maturity in his son's eyes that hadn't been there a week ago. She's gone, Danny said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Good. I can't forgive her for what she tried to do to you. To us. Victor sat on the edge of Danny's bed. Son, I need to tell you something. This isn't over. The people who sent those men are still out there, and they might try again. So what do? We disappear for a while. Let me handle the people who want us dead. Danny closed his textbook and looked directly at his father. Dad, I want to help. You're 17 years old. I'm your son. This is my fight too. Victor saw himself at that age, eager to prove himself, ready to take on the world. But he also saw the innocence that Danny still possessed, the part of his son that could still be saved from the darkness that had claimed Victor's own soul. Your job is to stay safe and finish school. My job is to make sure you have a future to look forward to. Over the next week, Victor made his preparations with methodical precision. Danny was enrolled in a private school in Colorado, staying with Victor's brother Rick and his family. Official records showed Victor taking a medical leave from the military for PTSD treatment, providing cover for what he really planned to do. The hunting expedition would begin with Meridian Security Solutions and work backward through their client list until he found the source. It would be dangerous, illegal, and probably cost him his military career. But some things mattered more than career advancement. His family had been threatened. His son had been terrorized. His wife had been manipulated into betraying everything they'd built together. Someone was going to pay for that. All of them. Victor Steele had spent 23 years serving his country as a soldier. Now he would serve his family as something else entirely. Judge, jury, an executioner for those who thought they could destroy what he'd built. The war that had started in his living room would end when the last enemy was eliminated. And Victor Steele never left enemies alive to fight another day. As he prepared to disappear into the shadows of the intelligence world, Victor made himself a promise. When he emerged, his family would be safe forever, because anyone who might threaten them would be dead. No mercy, no forgiveness, no survivors. The soldier was going hunting. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.